Hello and welcome back to Blow Up the Team. Jeremy here today with Matt.
What's up?
Today we're going to be going through the New York Jets and their. Okay, okay. Perhaps a bit unnecessary there, but perhaps
Sorry,
just a
my
bit.
bad.
Okay, Giants fans building.
Oh, I
Anyways,
don't know what came over me there. That was weird.
yeah, I don't know.
That never
Coughing fits,
happens.
man. Coughing fits. Corona hit you hard. Corona hit you hard.
Yeah, Corona really hit me hard. Yeah, when I went to the my asthma doctor and I didn't have Corona, yeah, it really hit me hard.
Okay. Anyways, we're going to be going through the New York Jets and their 2020 NFL draft. Um, Real quick note, any highlight video that I show, not you show, I don't think you're showing me anything. Any highlight video that I show, I think this one is only Sam Darnold highlights from this year, if I'm not mistaken. That will be linked in the description down below, so go ahead and check that out. Um, but other than that, let's get started with a little recap of the 2019 season for the New York Jets. They finished 7-9, which in my opinion was a blessing for the Jets last year. I'm not gonna lie to you. Um, the offense was downright terrible, atrocious, worst in the league in my opinion. I actually think I would have rather had literally any other team's offense last season than this team. Um, they were last in the
Bengals?
league in yards per game, 29th in passing yards, 31st in rushing yards, and 31st in points per game.
Oh, jeez, I didn't realize it was that bad. I thought I was doing a little bit of looking. I'm like, oh, I mean, like, I knew every time I watched them, I kind of wanted to kill myself, but like, I didn't think it was that hard. I mean, I guess they weren't that horrible. They finished 7-9.
Yeah, no,
Fuck.
the defense absolutely put the team on their back. Um, Sam Darnold is young, and he did miss time with mono. I think he missed what was the first like 3 or 4 weeks, and then obviously there was recovery time after that where he wasn't, at full strength. So that definitely played a role in part of why the offense was kind of the way it was. He's a young quarterback. He's gonna get up to NFL speed anyways, and then on top of that, missing time is not good. Um, but nevertheless, it did happen. They also needed to beef up the offensive line, so they went out and they signed Connor McGovern to start at center, as well as signing Greg Van Roten to start at right guard. And then they also signed Brashad Perriman to be wide receiver one, um, and signing Frank Gore to be running back two. Which creates a kind of older but legendary running back duo of Le'Veon Bell and Frank Gore, which is going to be interesting. Le'Veon Bell has kind of underperformed since he's been in New York, so hopefully they find a way to get him better involved in the offense. That is the goal.
I'm not
Um,
gonna lie, like after that contract holdout, that was kind of like the worst possible season for Le'Veon Bell. He talked so much shit, pissed off all of his friends in Pittsburgh, made the city that cared about him hate him, and then like I understood like not, but then like sitting in fucking Miami releasing shit rap, and then coming back and not doing anything, like that was like the worst possible season he could have had.
yeah, he definitely is going to need to pick it up next season.
Was
Um,
he? Did he sit out? Now, did he sit out just because he didn't want to fucking play, or did he sit out because of money? I can't remember. It
It
wasn't like
was
a
it was
situation.
because of money. So the way that the contracts work in the NFL is kind of crappy, especially if you were a high profile pick high in the first round. I can't tell you off the top of my head exactly when Le'Veon Bell was picked, but um, you can get franchise tagged for a bunch of years. You can get, I mean, your rookie contract is a few years, and then you can get, fifth year options, and then you can get, franchise tags. And obviously, I'm not saying that all of that applies to the Le'Veon Bell situation. I'm gonna be honest, I don't fully remember. It's been a few years now.
Yeah, because like I can't remember if it was because I know that because we talked about the contract situation back in our podcasting days of about this, and I just couldn't remember if it was like a
No,
situation
it
like
was
in
definitely a
Dallas.
contracting dispute. At the end of the day, he was grossly underpaid for the production he was showing on the field. But quite frankly, for the Steelers, there was other than just to please him, there was no need to pay him because they could continue to franchise tag him, and it was pretty unprecedented for players to willingly sit out multiple years of their career, which is ultimately what he decided to do. Um, but yeah, the contract situation in the NFL is kind of unfortunate with their ability to get franchise tagged for so long, and that kind of keeps their payroll under maybe what they could get on market value. Um, so yeah, there's that. But hopefully they'll be able to put it together this season, and Le'Veon Bell will have a better season. You kind of hate to see what's happened to him. There was quite frankly a lot of turnover in this offense. I'm not a Jets expert, although one of the kids I spent a lot of time with this past semester, this past year, was a big Jets fan. And there looks to be quite a bit of a turnover on this offense. In terms of like, I don't see Robbie Anderson on there. I know Quincy Enunwa. He was like that guy a few years ago, but he was been on and off the IR or the is the IR in this? I think it's the IR
I
or
think
the
so.
I think oh yeah IR injured reserve. They changed the fucking name for this thing. I feel like every year. Um, but he's been bouncing on and off that with injury issues as well, so that doesn't exactly help. But there's just been a little bit of turnover, so maybe they'll get some younger guys in there that'll mesh a little bit better with Sam Darnold. Um, they also signed Joe Flacco to be backup, which I think is huge. They'll actually have a competent backup if he gets mono again this year before the season starts. Um, so there's that. But let's talk about this defense, which was the bright spot of this team, which is what, in my opinion, pretty much the only reason you got to 7-9. Seventh in yards allowed per game, 17th in rushing in passing yards allowed, and second in rushing yards allowed, and 16th in points allowed. Now, it may look like the defense was good, but not like insane or anything. But like I watched a lot of football. I have the Sunday NFL ticket. I watch basically all the games, even the Jets. And quite frankly, that defense was just downright stifling at times. A complete like contrast to the lethargic offense that we were watching. Now I am playing Sam Darnold highlights because that is the future of your team. But this defense is the reason why the Jets were relevant this year. Sam Darnold had a few moments, but it was this defense that put him in position to be able to do all of this. The defense played very, very well, especially in the beginning of the season. I specifically remember, I think it was week 1, that game against the Bills was something else, that defense. So um, the defense, it was a very, very high point for them. Now, there is the whole business with Jamal Adams requesting a trade. You have to find a way to keep him. He is a pivotal piece of that defense. He is the cornerstone of that secondary, and he can just do so many things on the football field. You cannot afford to lose him. They have to find a way to try to make him happy, and find a way to get him to stay with the team. If they don't, they're going to have some big shoes to fill because he is an outstanding player for them in that secondary. Um, they did sign Pierre Desir to start at cornerback this season. But I'm not too upset about them not making a ton of moves in the offseason at the wide receiver, excuse me, at the defensive positions because they were so solid on defense this past year. It kind of makes sense. Now let's get into the draft now. They did make 9 picks, and only 1 was in the 6th round, and none were in the 7th round. So they kind of try to stick in the middle of the draft more. Trying to find some decent talent I think they're kind of trying to poise themselves to compete in the near future. I think they feel like Sam Darnold's going to take another step up this year. Hopefully he'll be healthy the whole season, and they can get him enough talent around him where they can kind of make a playoff push. And quite frankly, I mean the Jets, even with as bad as that offense looked this year, they weren't that far out of a wild card spot this season. So I don't think that's a completely unrealistic goal for them. But let's go ahead and get into the actual picks. They start off with Mekhi Becton out of Louisville, offensive tackle. He's got good size, length, and speed. He can line up at left or right tackle, and he has the power to create a push on linemen, as well as get to the second level and take out linebackers in the run game. He has the ability to develop into an elite pass blocker, but he's not quite there yet. He is strong enough to knock defenders off balance, and he's going to be an immediate impact for this team. Slated to start at left tackle at the very start of the season. They needed to beef up the offensive line. I think that has something to do with why that offense had such a bad showing. Sam Darnold was always under pressure, always having to scramble, and Le'Veon Bell, even the best running backs in the league. I'm not saying Le'Veon Bell is still one of the best running backs in the league. That still remains to be seen, but you have to you still have to give him guys that can block for him. So I think that's going to be important for them moving forward. Being able to build out that kind of talented offensive line to protect for those guys. Next up, they went with Denzel Mims, wide receiver out of Baylor. He's got good size, top end speed, and length, and he's got that second gear to really be able to create problems on vertical routes. He runs hard and he can create a play once the ball is in his hands. he is big enough to be a legitimate red zone threat, which I think is something that they were lacking, which is why they were, I think it was the second worst scoring offense in the league. I think part of that is they didn't really have that elite red zone presence, and the offense would kind of stall out once it got down near the end. If it got down near the red zone, it would kind of stall out a little bit because they didn't have that threat, and I think he gives them that ability. He is listed as wide receiver 3 to start the season, but I expect him and Darnold to build rapport, and he should become quickly more involved with the offense. Especially with all the turnover they had, he's going to be looking for that guy he can rely on, and I don't see why Denzel Mims can't be that. Next up, they went with that Ashton Davis, safety out of California. He's rangy and can learn to play center field with given the time to develop. He has started at corner in 2016 and he can cover well for a safety, as well as he's shown flashes of being able to be an effective run stopper and being able to step up and be impactful in the run game. He does need to work on his consistency a bit, but as of right now, he is listed as a backup free safety. I think it's important to note, though, that with Jamal Adams requesting that trade, now I haven't really seen anything come of it yet, so they could wind up riding it out and waiting to see how it happens. I haven't really seen an update of it since the initial report came out, so I don't know exactly what's going on with that. But if he does wind up getting traded, or they lose him next year, as the roster sits right now, I think Davis would be the next guy up. Marcus May, in my opinion, would move to strong safety to attempt to replace Adams, and then Davis steps up to be starting free safety. So definitely a guy that is ready to compete for this team and ready to step up and make plays for the team whenever they need him to. Next up, we got Jabari Zuniga. Sorry if I can't pronounce the names. My pronunciations are notoriously bad. He's a defensive end out of Florida. He's got great burst speed with the top end speed to finish the play. He's got the strength to jolt offensive linemen on contact, but he does need to develop better lower body flexibility to kind of be able to consistently finish in the pass rush. Sometimes being able to, the quarterback steps up in the pocket or gets outside them, whatever it is, they've got to be able to move laterally to stay on and finish the play. And so that I think that over time he can develop that. He does have lots of range as a run defender, and he pursues well. And he's currently listed as a starting weak side linebacker. I would expect him to be active, especially in the pass rushing game, and really just kind of setting him loose to wreak havoc on the defensive line. Next up, they went with a Michael Perine, his teammates from Florida, back-to-back here. This one at running back. He's a physical runner who has shown the ability to run with patience. He's got a strong center of gravity and has shown very solid balance. He has the potential to develop into a reliable checkdown option, as well as being an effective pass blocker, but this will take time for him to be able to develop. He shows decent burst through the hole, but he doesn't necessarily have the lateral quickness or the second gear to really create more yards on his own. I think this pick made a lot of sense right up until they signed Frank Gore right after, like a few days after the draft, or maybe just over a week later. I think that Frank Gore came in and kind of solidified himself as what that second running back option was going to be, and Perine was actually pushed off the depth charts. I think that over time they will look to develop him and see where else he can fit. Maybe next year, or if injuries arise this year, he could have an impact, but it looks like for right now they're going to look to develop him and see what he can do. Next up, they went with James Morgan, quarterback out of Florida International. He's a natural leader with good toughness and good size. He's got a strong arm with a quick release, and he can move the coverage with his eyes, which is something that you don't necessarily always see out of college quarterbacks. Now, obviously, she's really only been able to show this in flashes, but even just that is more than a lot of college quarterbacks can say. He's gotten better at his decision making over the past 2 seasons. He is a bit of a streaky passer who needs to work on his touch, but he's got decent pocket mobility. He may not exactly be a threat to really get outside the pocket and make the play with his feet in the run game, but I would say he's got decent enough mobility. He is listed as the fourth string quarterback, and my biggest question here is why. I did mention earlier that they do have Joe Flacco on the roster as well. Obviously, Sam Darnold is the guy that they're looking for to lead the team into the future. I don't know if this was a pick that they made trying to look ahead and say, oh well, maybe he can be that kind of long-term backup, somebody that we know will be a solid player for us that we don't have to go out and spend money in free agency for a backup quarterback. I don't exactly know what they were thinking here. I personally would have liked to have seen them go somewhere else with this pick. I think that already having such a young quarterback on the roster with two guys behind him already in the depth charts, I think picking up the fourth quarterback in this spot here was maybe not the most value that they could have gotten. Next up, we got Cameron Clark, offensive tackle out of Charlotte. He fights hard whistle to whistle, and he's got the strength to jar defenders. He fits better into power heavy systems, and he has the potential to develop into a solid blocker. Um, he's got length to push the speed rushes past the quarterback, but this is another guy that's not on the depth charts. I'm kind of surprised about this because when I was looking him up, there was a lot of people who felt like he might have been a steal later in the draft. Obviously, only time will tell on this, and we'll be able to see in a few years if he kind of makes a move up the depth charts, whether it's on the Jets or on another team. But that is back-to-back picks, or not back-to-back, excuse me, but two of the last three picks that I don't even see on the depth charts. And I looked around for a few minutes, and I didn't necessarily see any trades that they made with these guys involved either. So it kind of just feels like the team can't quite decide what it wants to do almost. Like they're making a lot of signings that make it seem like they're ready to compete now and they want to win now and they want to make the playoffs now. But then they've made picks here that, I mean, in the middle rounds, I mean, we're talking about fourth, fifth round picks here that are extreme kind of. I'm trying to think of what they would say, what they would
They're
call it in
just
the NFL.
contradictory. They just they don't make sense. And you get Frank Gore after you draft someone who is trying to develop, and so he gets pushed off depth charts. Like that's just it's like, hey, I got drafted. I'm on the depth chart. Awesome. I have I'm gonna develop, and then oh, I guess I'm not. I guess they don't give a shit. Like, it just doesn't make sense. I don't like it at all. And by the way, I think I think it's putting it lightly. I would like to see them go a different way with the pick for a fourth string quarterback. What an absolute waste, in my opinion.
I was trying not to be too harsh. I was trying.
No. Well, listen, you can be the voice of reason. I'll be the voice of harshness. Listen, I have about the average intelligence of most Twitter football fans. So, like they watch like 5 seconds of game footage and then are an expert. So I watched about 5 seconds worth of football last year. I am an expert now.
Okay.
Like seriously, that's just oh yeah, like if he's like third string, maybe you can kind of excuse it because Joe Flacco has definitely seen his prime and struggled a bit last year. But come on, you already have another guy behind Joe Flacco. Like,
I don't
what's
remember
the
his name
point
off the
of
top of my head. I'm gonna check really quickly, but I believe he was only like 29. I checked. David Fales or
like
Fales. I
what's
don't know how.
what
He's only 29, so it's not like he's.
And he got playing time last year. That's a guy. Like you're not gonna put the other guy ahead of him, obviously. Like it just doesn't. You're wasting your draft pick and you're wasting his time too.
I mean,
So it's like
it doesn't make a lot of sense to me really at all. I don't know exactly what their plan was with that pick. I'm not gonna lie to you. I was trying to kind of give them the benefit of the doubt, but that's three picks in a row here that I personally don't really like, and obviously I'm never going to claim to be an expert. This is just one man's opinion on what I've been reading and looking at, but I do think that those three picks are going to come back to haunt them a little bit in a few years. We've seen a ton of other teams get a lot of talent later in the draft, and it just seems like the Jets, in my opinion at least, that the Jets may have went 0 for 3 in those three picks there. Those three picks in the fourth round kind of were not ideal. Moving on to the fifth round, we've got Bryce Hall, cornerback out of Virginia. He's got the length and speed to develop into an effective press corner. He closes well and he stops a lot of the after the catch yardage that tends to happen. He does get a bit grabby at times, and his change of direction isn't great. But he does have big hands, and he is an ex-receiver in high school, so he may have the potential to make some of those plays downfield. He is currently listed as a third-string cornerback. I could see him finding a home in special teams, or potentially developing later on in his career into a solid corner. That is another one that's going to just take time for him to develop and see what his potential really lies, gives him. I do like this pick significantly better than the previous three I was talking about because I do see him finding a home in special teams, and anytime that you can get an impact player in any of the three stages of the game, that's a worthwhile pick in my opinion. And I do think that there is a strong chance that he could find a home at least in the coverage team or something along those lines. Last up here in the sixth round, they actually went with a punter out of Texas A&M, Braden Mann. He set the record for the highest punting average in a game at 60 plus and 60 plus yard punts in a season. If I remember correctly, the record for highest punting average was somewhere in the 60 yardage range as well against Alabama. He gets good distance on his kickoffs, and they needed a punter, so they found one late in the draft with a big leg. Not a whole lot to really look at there, but I do think that it makes a lot of sense for them to do that, and quite frankly, I like that pick a lot better than the three that I was talking about in the middle.
Honestly, if Madden had for your my career, like hello, punter, obvious, best position, 100% would buy the game if I got to be a punter. No, I have to play a skill position. You saying punters don't have skill, Madden?
Interesting.
Fuck you.
Okay, I think we could see where this guy's priorities lie. Perhaps.
Hell yeah, nothing. Listen, I punting analyzer. I'm the punting coach.
My roommate was a punter and a kicker in high school, so I got to learn a little
Hell
bit
yeah,
more.
they're the real ones.
Yeah, I was getting to get a lot of insight into. It was actually pretty funny. A little side tangent here, before we get into the actual draft grades, but I guess you can probably sense where this is headed. It was so weird to me. We would sit there and we would watch football on Sundays, and like I would say a good 85% of the time, 80 to 85% of the time, he could watch the punter line up, not the punter, excuse me, watch the kicker line up for the kick and tell me if he was going to make it or not. Like legitimately, he would watch their footwork and he could tell me based on how they walked back from the football before the ball was even, or like not from the football, but before they even walked back to get ready for the snap, he could tell me if they were going to make it or not. It didn't matter. It was insane to me. There's so many weird like quirks that go on in terms of like every part of the rhythm has to be on point, and it's amazing to me that somebody just knows them so intuitively that he can tell me that accurately if someone will or won't make the punt, but the kick, excuse
Kind
me.
of insane.
But anyways, draft grade. I'm gonna let Matt go first on this one.
For the harsh one.
I'm gonna let you come down harsh first, and then I'll see if I agree.
Fair, fair. You missed 3 picks in a row in the draft, and you draft one guy who's just gets pushed off the depth chart because you can't make up your mind what your front office is doing because you fired your fucking GM who was actually doing a fairly good job after one season because I don't know, you're a bunch of incompetent assholes, and then you get a fourth string quarterback who's never going to see play because you don't know how to draft. Fuck you. You get an F.
Oh. Okay. I think perhaps an F could be a bit harsh.
D- at best.
A
D would be my non-harsh grade.
A D would be a non-harsh grade. I was thinking a D plus. So, if your non-harsh grade is a D, I think a D plus makes sense for where I was standing. I'm going to put the D plus because this is my video and fuck you.
Well, it's not like it's, yeah.
But I am gonna put a D plus.
I am the one who has to plug it in.
But here's my reasoning, and I'm gonna explain why for a minute. I do actually like their first 4 picks, to be honest with you. They got a starting offensive tackle, which they needed. They needed to buff the offensive line, and they did that. They got themselves a skill position player with the wide receiver from Baylor. I think that he's going to be a talent, and he'll mesh well with Darnold. They did find a guy that could step in the event that Jamal Adams does have to, or for whatever reason he gets injured, he decides not to play, he gets traded, whatever. They do have a guy that could step in, as well as the defensive end that they picked up from Florida. I think that he will also be an impact player for them this year. So it was actually, first 4 picks was looking on the up and up. It was looking pretty good, and then they did unfortunately whiff 3 in a row, which significantly brought down the rating because those fourth and fifth round picks are really where, if you haven't been following this channel, that's where a lot of my rating comes from because I mean, those first
Almost
few
every team
picks.
is getting someone decent that can make an impact in their first couple rounds. Like
Yeah,
that's
exactly. Those first couple round picks are, I'm not gonna say they're no brainers, but you're not gonna really miss too hard in those first few rounds. At least not that we can see now, obviously. Um, Maybe over time those guys turn out to be busts or whatever, but from what we can see immediately after the draft, you're not gonna completely miss too often. But I don't particularly like these 3 picks for them here. So I am going to slot them in at that D plus. Now, keep in mind, this is not an overall. I do want to say this. I didn't say it earlier, but this is not an off-season grade. It is specifically and only limited to just the draft grade. So this is not indicative of what I think about the rest of their off-season, nor is it indicative of how I think the team will do next season. It is purely how I think they'd made, purely how I think they did in their 9 draft picks. So please keep that in mind. But I think that is going to wrap up the video for tonight. Again, make sure to go check out the link to that Sam Darnold highlight video. That will be linked in the description down below. Also in the description down below, make sure to check out our Discord and our other social medias. Those will also be linked. Tomorrow, make sure to come back and check out Matt's Pittsburgh Pirates video. Matt, are you excited?
nope.
You're just on a roll today, man. You're just feeling yourself, isn't it?
I mean, listen. I will say the Pittsburgh Pirates are finally going in the right direction and agreeing this team is shit. And they need to build for the future finally. They had a horrible, horrible GM for so many years who just, would let's get one big player and then like middle of the line player so we can kind of compete and hover around 500 or just below 500, and then not do anything ever because we're incompetent. And then they had that horrible Chris Archer trade, and they gave Tyler Glasnow and Austin Meadows to the Rays, who helped carry that team. I will say though, Tyler Glasnow never would have thrived in Pittsburgh because Pittsburgh's pitching philosophy was something straight out of like the '80s. But with new management, new coaches, I think the team's finally looking like it's going to start building in the right direction. So there is that. But as like a term for their season, it's not. There's nothing to talk about. It's going to be bad.
Alrighty. Well, I guess you have a preview then for what tomorrow's video is going to look like, but make sure to come and check that out. Also, if you're interested, go ahead and check out, these are obviously, not obviously, but these are series that we've been doing, so go ahead and check out some of our older videos as well. But for today, that will be it for us. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you next time. Peace.